I'm sure most of you have already seen all of the drama going on between Joe Rogan, RFK, who Joe Rogan just recently had on his show to talk about things such as the jab and a lot of other things. If you haven't seen the podcast, it's actually one of Joe Rogan's best in my opinion, so I would definitely go check that one out. But if you don't know the original situation, I did a video on this yesterday going over exactly what happened between Peter Hotez, who is a woke doctor who was trying to defend Big Pharma against people like Joe Rogan and RFK Jr., who were talking about the jab and other things that Big Pharma has done that have been very negative to the overall humanity in the past. And of course, people like Peter Hotez, who is very much in favor of Big Pharma and makes a lot of money off of Big Pharma, is going to defend Big Pharma. And also people like Mark Cuban jumped in to defend Peter Hotez and go after Joe Rogan. Let's check this out. So this article from Fortune says Mark Cuban attacks Joe Rogan and Elon Musk in vaccines brawl on Twitter. Way to talk in generalities, Joe. And we're not going to go through this article. I'm actually just going to read you the actual tweet and show it on the screen here. Here is the original tweet from Mark Cuban that Peter Hotez actually ended up responding to as well, which we'll go over. And then Peter Hotez went on his own show, or not his own show, but went on a different show and gave a 3-minute monologue just complaining about Joe Rogan and RFK and the invites and people trying to get him so desperately to go debate RFK on Joe Rogan's show, which I think that pot is now up to like 2.52 million or something, which is insane that the guy won't just go on. If RFK is as wrong as Peter Hotez says that he is, why not just go on Joe Rogan's show, get the 2.52 million, donate it to the charity of your choice, which would probably be a Big Pharma charity, and then, donate it to a charity of your choice, and also destroy RFK and Joe Rogan's whole narrative. It seems like a total win-win situation, but he refuses to do it because he's scared and he knows he's wrong. But anyway, let's check out this tweet from Mark Cuban responding to Joe Rogan. Way to talk in generalities, Joe. Not saying there aren't a lot of effed up things about pharma. That's why we created cost plus drugs. Great plug there, Mark. But to ignore the same industry has saved who knows how many lives is BS, and you know it. It's also disrespectful to all the doctors, researchers, and medical professionals that dedicate their lives to saving lives, like Dr. Hotez, the 800K plus doctors in the country that believe vaccines save lives. So that's a very interesting statement there. I agree that there's a lot of doctors out there who dedicate their lives to saving lives, and I'm very, very grateful. And not just doctors, medical professionals in general. I'm very, very grateful for those people. Dr. Hotez is not one of those people. Dr. Hotez is one of the people who don't care at all about human life, only cares about his own profit and how he can further his career by defending Big Pharma, by going against people like Joe Rogan and RFK, who not call out all of Big Pharma, who don't call out every single doctor, every single medical professional, but call out the issues within the system of Big Pharma, within the system of the medical industry. That's what they're doing. They're not saying every single person who works in medicine is evil. They're saying that there's a lot of people at the top, very powerful people, who kind of trickle down and do cause a lot of corruption within the medical industry. It's undeniable. And I would say people like Peter Hotez is one of the main problems with Big Pharma, with the medical industry. So to say that, this statement right here, researchers and medical professionals that dedicate their lives to saving lives, I'm very grateful for those people. But then to follow it up with people like Dr. Hotez is just disingenuous, man. It's just very obvious that Mark Cuban wants to find his way into that club as well. Only cares about profit. Like, he's going to act like he does, and he's going to act like he actually cares about the well-being of people, and maybe a part of him does. But at the end of the day, man, most of these people, outside of people like Joe Rogan and like RFK, and I don't even know 100% about RFK, but people like Joe Rogan who have made their money already and they're just cool with it. And now they're just kind of looking into things like calling out BS here and there. People like Mark Cuban, though, who are still just chasing more and more money and really only care about getting more and more money. They don't care about the well-being of humanity. He's just trying to virtue signal. And like I said, gain access to that exclusive club that people like Peter Hotez is in. You aren't trying to find the ground truth on vaccines. If you were, you would just bring on someone who focused on debating the issue, like the real truther, whoever that is, I'm not sure. Hopefully Joe Rogan brings someone on to debate RFK. I just want to see that really badly. Trying to bully Dr. Hotez is ridiculous. You have producers that will prepare you and you get to control the conversation. Robert Kennedy Jr. also has a staff ready to prepare him, and these topics are what he talks about in every speech. I don't really understand his statement there. I don't understand how Robert Kennedy and Joe Rogan having staffs to prepare them makes a difference. Isn't Peter Hotez, his entire job is to research these kind of things? And what's stopping him from getting a few people to help him out with research? I don't understand how that even factors in, even a little bit. But anyway, you both do this on a daily basis. Dr. Hotez works every day to try to find ways to help people. Joe, you and Elon Musk's Twitter are the mainstream online media, and your platforms have become everything supposedly wrong with MSM. You are driven by self-interest, just like the MSM has always been accused of. And Mark Cuban isn't. Mark Cuban is taking the high road on this because Mark Cuban isn't driven by self-interest at all. But Joe Rogan is. It's a clown show, man. And you both have earned that right. You busted your asses to be great at what you do and earned all that you have accomplished. But don't lie to yourselves and all of us and tell us you are different. You aren't. Like I said, absolute clown show. You don't really need me to go too far into why this tweet is a bunch of nonsense. I think I've done that enough. We also have Peter Hotez responding to that Mark Cuban tweet about Joe Rogan, saying many thanks to Mark Cuban for your support. That's really nice and much appreciated. So even though we all know that this is a clown show, we all know that what Mark Cuban tweeted is a bunch of nonsense and he doesn't care about the well-being of people any more than Joe Rogan does. I think that he probably doesn't care about the well-being of people at all. He just wants to make more money, and he's acting like he cares about people's well-being because he's making his own business, Cost Plus Drugs. He plugged it in that tweet. Like, it's very obvious what he's trying to do, but of course Peter Hotez just eats it up, man. The guy's embarrassing. Let's check out what Peter Hotez, like I said, he went on a show on MSNBC and talked about the entire Joe Rogan, Peter Hotez, Mark Cuban, Elon Musk, RFK situation. Let's check this out real quick.
Connection between vaccines and autism. No connection, no established document. Contrary to what RFK Jr. and other anti-vax nuts have claimed, there is no connection between vaccines and autism. No connection, no established documented connection between vaccines and serious diseases or tend to save lives across the...
By the way, I just want you to take a look at Peter Hotez right here and tell me, would you rather be taking medical advice from Joe Rogan and RFK or from this guy right here? I'm not trying to shit on him too much, but just look at the guy, man. He doesn't look very healthy. I'm not going to lie. He looks pretty unhealthy, not like a medical professional should look.
The board, do they not? That's what the peer-reviewed evidence overwhelmingly shows, does it not? And people are dying right now from COVID still because the evidence on COVID vaccines efficacy is being ignored or shouted down on social media.
Well, there's three or four moving parts to this. So I'm a vaccine scientist. I make low-cost, patent-free vaccines for low and middle-income countries. We made 100 million doses we made 2 vaccine prototypes that led to 100 million doses being administered in India and Indonesia. No patents, minimal strings attached. So we actually found a way to bypass the pharma companies, and yet RFK Jr. incessantly calls me a pharma shill when, if anything, our vaccines maybe kept Pfizer and Moderna out of markets in India and in Indonesia. So I don't understand that piece. And then the reason I got involved with RFK Jr. in the first place is I have an adult daughter, Rachel, who has autism and intellectual disabilities, and wrote the book Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, that refuted all of his false claims. And that's been, he's been kind of after me ever since then. And now he's at it again. But this time, Elon, I'm sorry, this time, Eddie, it's caused something really terrible, and that is during our COVID pandemic, I have a new book coming out that basically says 200,000 Americans needlessly perished because they believed the anti-vaccine disinformation and refused to take a COVID vaccine during our Delta wave and BA1 Omicron wave in 2021.
Yeah, this is just one big cope. I'm not going to lie. There's no possible way that many people died because they refused to take the jab. I don't believe that for a second. I would love to see the numbers whenever that book ends up coming out, and how you actually, decide that those people died because they decided to not take the jab. I think it's one big cope. I think it's 100% one big cope from these types of people. And I'm not going to go too far into like what he said about his daughter or whatever. Having autism, I'm not going to, I don't like doing that. I don't like going after people's family members. I'd rather just attack the ideas. But also the book that he wrote saying that his daughter's autism wasn't caused by vaccines, it also seems like it could possibly be one big cope, but I'm not gonna, like I said, not gonna go too hard on that. Let's continue with this clip.
After vaccines were widely available. So the point is, anti-vaccine disinformation, it's always done a lot of damage and harm, but now it's a lethal force in the United States. And that's why we have to have that discussion. And I offered to come and go on Joe Rogan again. I've been on a couple of times and have that discussion with him, but not to turn it into the Jerry Springer show with having RFK Jr. on.
How is it turning into the Jerry Springer show by having RFK Jr. on? I don't understand. He's willing to go on Joe Rogan's show. He doesn't even, I think he said he lives in like Houston or somewhere around there. And Joe Rogan's, office, his podcast studio is in Austin. So it's not even that far away. He doesn't even have to drive that far. It's not that inconvenient for him. I don't understand why he's willing to go on Joe Rogan's podcast but not debate RFK. I mean, I totally understand, but it doesn't make logical sense from what he's trying to spew, from what he's trying to portray. It doesn't make logical sense at all. I understand that he's scared to debate RFK, but he's willing to go on Joe Rogan's show and get that clout, get that money. He's willing to do that, no question. He's willing to go debate Joe Rogan, who isn't as well read on these things as someone like RFK Jr. is. But he's not willing. He's willing to go on the show and talk to Joe and debate Joe because he can make Joe look like an idiot because this is what this guy does for a living. And Joe Rogan, it's not what he does for a living. He's not even close to as well read as Peter Hotez or RFK Jr. is on the topic. But he refuses to talk to RFK Jr. He refuses to go on Joe Rogan's podcast with RFK there, but he's totally fine with going there without RFK. It's very obvious what's going on here. The guy is scared. He's running scared.
Well, so it's sad because I said I'm so fed up with the debate me, because it's not really about the debate. If it was about finding out information, as you said, you've already written about vaccines and autism. You've already spoken and written about COVID vaccines. I think you've been on MSNBC and other channels hundreds of times since the start of the pandemic. People can hear your views and the evidence you bring to this. So they're not actually interested in evidence. And it saddens me that you're a man who basically has saved lives abroad with the vaccines you've developed, whereas RFK has contributed to a culture, a vaccine misinformation culture, that has led to the deaths, as you say, of hundreds of thousands of lives, and yet
I don't even care what this guy has to say, man. He works for MSNBC. Like, it's very obvious what he's being fed to say. They've been saying this for the last 3-4 years, and nobody really cares, man. Like, we all understand what MSNBC is. We all understand what CNN is. We all even understand what Fox News is at this point. They're all propaganda networks. They're all fed information to spew. But let me know what you guys think about the response to Joe Rogan absolutely destroying this woke doctor, Peter Hotez. What do you think about Mark Cuban's response to the situation? And what do you think about Peter Hotez just coping so hard in this entire speech right here? I think the entire 3 minutes that we just watched was one big cope, in my opinion. And possibly, I haven't read them, obviously. One of the books that he talked about isn't even out yet, and one of them I haven't read. But I think that those books also might just be a big cope. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments about this whole Joe Rogan versus Peter Hotez situation.